can do that. Boom, see, change to yellow. I can even color in the first child span inside of a document, or the first of anything inside of an element. So if I wanted to target, let's say, a span that is the first child inside of an argument or inside of a document, I just go, there you are, span first child. And I can change the background color again. In this situation, let's say that we want it to be orange. And there you can see, covered up the very first span in the document orange. I could also select every paragraph element that is the last child of its parent by going paragraph, last child. You can do this for any of the elements. Last child, change that color, reload. There you can see, went and got the last child paragraph, colored it that tan color. And these just go on and on forever. I'll show you this one. This is going to allow us to check these or select the second child span. So nth child, 2. And of course you can put 3, 4, 5, whatever you want to put inside of there. And you can see it went and colored this guy that same tan color we had before. Let's say you wanted to have a hover effect on all of your H3 tags so that whenever they're hovered over, they change to orange for some reason. You can do that. So it's not just tied to links. You can do it to any of your different elements as long as you target them. Another thing that's kind of neat is we can change our cursor. So let's look at something here. Here we go. We have a span with the idea of common quote. Whenever we put our mouse over that, we're going to have the cursor change. So we'll call this common quote. Change the cursor to a pointer. And there you can see, whenever I put my cursor over that, it changes right like this. And the different cursors that are available to you are pointer, crosshair, move, text, wait, progress, help. And of course, you're also going to be able to define your custom cursors. So whatever that is, right like that with a URL if you'd like to. Another thing we could do is draw a box around an element. So let's say the fourth paragraph we have here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say I wanted to draw a box around that. Just target that 4 like this. Call outline. Say I want it to be 2 pixels and let's make it solid blue. And there you can see it's outlined. You could also come in and draw a border in a very similar fashion. So for paragraph 5, let's do border instead. 2 pixels. Solid, and let's make it black this time. Reload it. There you can see how that shows up. And let's do something a little bit neat. Let's go and create some buttons. Okay, so as you can see right here, I have a list called buttons, and each one of them has a class of site button, and I'm also going to do sort of a slideshow type of thing over here to demonstrate some other effects you can have. So I'm going to target the buttons list that I have there, and let's go and give them a width of 150 pixels, like that. Target a specific item with the class name of site button, like that. You can do text align, you can do anything. Text align with that, of course. Let's make it center. Say I want to give it a margin bottom of 5 pixels so that those are divided up. And then let's say that I want it to come in and specifically target the links inside of those and have those displayed as block elements. And let's say that I want the color on that to be white for those buttons. And of course we want to get rid of the text decoration because we don't want those to be underlined. Custom style for the link. Let's have this be background set for blue, and then also give it a border of 5 pixels, solid blue. And then whenever it's hovered over, let's paste that in there, site button A, hover. Let's change the background color on this again. I don't know, something that'll really show up like green. And let's let the border be the same. Paste that in there. And there you can see are the little links, little menus, and whenever you hover over them, they change to green. So that's sort of a way of making buttons. And I have these little pictures down here. Let's turn these into a sort of like a slideshow type of thing so that whenever we hover over these different images, they'll show up. So we'll go DL and kids pics like this. And if we look at them over here, there's kid pics. And I have a list, and then each of the list items is going to contain an image with a width and a height. These are going to be the thumbnails, and also are going to contain another image. It's going to be the larger version. I give this the class of hidden. And they're all going to be hidden by default. You're going to see here exactly how that works out. A, image, hidden. Let's go and define the visibility so that they do not show up by default. They're only going to show up whenever we hover over the smaller items. Position, and let's say we want this to be absolute. Make sure we spell it right. Position it from the left, 110 pixels. So we're only going to be positioning the large items, and they're going to be hidden by default. And then top, I don't know what this is going to be. Let's make it like 400 pixels. We'll see what it looks like later. And then if we want them to show up whenever the link is hovered over, that's the little thumbnail. We just go visibility and make it visible. Where does it show up at? And here you can see there is the image. There it shows up right there. We would want this to be lined up down here, of course, but if we hover over it, you can see how the pictures change. So just trying to show you everything humanly possible. Now we can see some examples of text decoration. Here's underline, and of course this would be underlined. This would be lined through, just like we have there. There's overline and lowercase. These were previously uppercase, as you can see. If we come over here, see? Lowercase, and we change them to lowercase. Uppercase is going to make all the letters uppercase, and capitalize is just going to capitalize the first letter, as you can see there. So there is text decoration, underline, line through, overline, and text transform, lowercase, uppercase, and capitalize. Now we'll go in here and we'll preserve any white space that we have in these guys. You can see here the white space is not preserved, and here, see, there's white space here. So let's go and fix that. It's actually kind of easy to do. We just go and type in the ID name, and that is whitespace dash pre. And if we want to preserve the white space, just go white space like this and pre. And it does exactly what you would think it would do. We could also set this up so that the white space will collapse. However, there will not be any line breaks unless you actually put a line break inside of it. And that's white space and no wrap. So basically no wrap is going to say that we're not going to have line breaks. And if you watch this guy, you're going to see that that happens. See, it goes on forever and ever and ever. We could, of course, preserve the wrap by typing pre-wrap in there for white space and reloading it. And as you can see right there, there's white space and it's also going to wrap. And lastly, we're going to also be able to define how our text is laid out. So let's say we want to go from left to right. We would define direction like this and just type in LTR, left to right. And also we could go in and do a similar thing. In this situation, we're going to call this right dash left, and then here this will be RTL, and you can see that that worked as well. Now let's go in and edit some tables so that we just have the tables on the screen, and let's define some generic table properties here. Give it a width of 600 pixels. We can define where we want our caption to show up, so caption side, and we'll have this be top. We can define text alignment and have this be center, so every column is centered. And let's define a border as well, make it solid and black. Reload, and you can see all of the tables have been set that way. We could, of course, come in and add some borders. This will affect everything, of course, every table anyway. 2 pixels solid and black. Now you can see all those different parts are going to be bordered. And we could also give everything a fixed size, the table layout fixed, like that. And you can also see that this shows up even though there's no information in that specific table. While this guy right here is fixed, and no matter how big the text is inside of here, it's going to remain fixed. However, for the table right here, let's go down so you can see here there's nothing in there. If we want specifically to have that collapse, what we're going to do is say table, spacing is the ID for that. And we could go border, spacing, 10 pixels and 15 pixels. And in this situation, border spacing is going to apply 10 pixels of space on the left and right and 15 pixels on the top and the bottom. And then we can also say that we want to hide anything that's empty. So empty cells and hide. And then we could also collapse our border. So border, collapse, and then just type in collapse. And you watch the change. And there you can see it. So there's a couple different ways to play around with tables. Now I'm going to be playing around with some divs. As you can see right here, we just have some blocks inside of here, and these are all just divs. That's it. And we're going to style them to add in some different blurring effects and so forth and so on. So I went and created some generic divs right here, some borders and so forth. Let's go in and do like a drop shadow effect on this div. And to do that, you just go box, shadow, like that. And you're going to have your horizontal position, the offset. So I'm going to go 5 pixels to the right, 5 pixels down. The blur amount, I'll just have that be 5 pixels. Size of my shadow, let's say 2 pixels. And the color that I want to use for it, I'm going to say gray. And you can see that that shows up right there. Let's go and do a couple more of these. This one's going to be div 2. This time I'm going to create an inner shadow. So we can pretty much leave everything exactly the same, except I'm going to say inset like that. And there's an inner shadow. And then also, let's say we want to do like a glow effect. Well, what we would do with that is say div 3, and we would set both of these to 0. So the first two are going to be 0, and this is going to give like a glow effect because there's not going to be an offset. We can change this to 10 pixels to make that sure that shows up, and change this to 5 pixels. Again, these are the same. This is going to be the blur amount, and this is going to be the size of the shadow. and I guess a yellow would look better as a glow effect. So there we are, and reload. And there you can see it sort of glows. Now let's go in and add a drop shadow to this text right here. Went and automatically created this and added in a font just to shave a little bit of time. I can just go div 4, and here we want to use a text shadow. And again, we're going to say, let's say 2 pixels to the right, 2 pixels down, 3 pixels is going to represent the blur amount. And then let's say we also want that to be gray. And while we're inside of here, let's also go and define div 4 or div 5 in this situation, text shadow as well. And if I want to add a glow effect, I'll just turn these to 0. See, there's no inset, and change this to yellow. There we are, and reload, and there you can see is the drop shadows and the glow. Now let's mess around with RGB colors. Once again, the only thing I did here was floated everything to the left, and here I am going to define my background, but instead of using hash codes, I'm going to use RGB, red, green, blue. If I want a red of 0, just put 0, and this is going to give me a bluish color. I could also come in here and change the opacity for the next one in line. So just do this and change this to 7 and change this to 8. We're going to do all of them, of course. If I want to change the opacity to this, I can actually do it in a couple different, well, 2 different ways. There's opacity. Let's say I want it to be 50%. There it is. Now it's 50%. And I could also go RGBA, alpha, opacity, same sort of thing. And here change that to 5 and reload it. And now you can see how those show up. Let's go and also do something similar with hue, saturation, and lightness. Let's change this to 9, change this to hue, saturation, lightness, 205, bluish type of color, 100%, set the lightness to 50%. Also be able to add alpha into this for the next one. So let's say we want that to be 50% alpha or opacity and reload it. And there you're going to see all those different colors. For the next one, I'm going to set it up so that we can actually round the corners. I previously had this all marked off. Let's go and get rid of this. And let's round the corners on these divs as well as create circles and tabs. Do that, we just go div 11, and then we're going to go border radius and change this to 30 pixels. That's going to create a round rectangle. And if you round it enough, it's actually going to look like a circle. So just change that to 50. And then for this last one, let's say we want to just round one corner, we would go border, say we want to do the top right radius, and then let that be 30 pixels. And there you can see that's exactly what they did. Now for the next one, I'm actually going to put a background image inside of here. So background image, said I would cover this in the past, so URL, and I have NTT logo, ping, like that. Could also layer the backgrounds. So let's say we want div 14, and we could do that with background size. And let's say that we wanted our image to be 200%. So we say 200%, both horizontal and vertical. And then let's say that we also want it to be 50. So that it's going to have multiple versions of that background image squashed in there at 50%. And change this to 15 and reload. And you can see there it zoomed in at 200, and there it fit my background image in 4 times because I divided it up 50%. Okay, so now we're going to get into some fun things. We're going to talk about gradients and animations and interacting with different elements on your screen. And as you can see, I'm in CSS Tut 8.html right here and stylesheet 8.css if you want to get these and play around with them on your own. I just have a whole bunch of divs over in the HTML file. What we're going to be getting into are some odd types of different ways of using CSS3 that are implemented different in different browsers. And you can see here our browser prefixes. Moz is for Firefox, MS is for Internet Explorer, O is for Opera, and WebKit is for both Chrome and Safari. And I created a generic div here with height and weight and margins and borders, and you can see them over here. And the very first thing I'm going to do is create a gradient. And you can see here all of the different prefixes for all of the different browsers. And to create a gradient, what you would define is the direction the gradient's going to be going in. This is 45 degrees. And then you're going to have color stops. And it's going to shift between red, yellow, and blue. And if we save that and reload it, you can see there's your gradient. Now you can also define that your direction is going to come in a different way, meaning that you'll be able to define the direction as left, right, top, or bottom. And you're still going to use the same exact color stops. And here you can see if I want to go from the left top like that, I can do so and save it and reload it, and now it goes in the opposite direction. Another way we could do gradients, and I just wanted to go through this really quickly, is you can also define how much of the total space each of the gradients is going to take up, so 20, 30, and 60. And no, those don't need to add up to 100, and you can just play around with them until you get the type of gradient you're looking for. And another thing we can do with gradients is actually repeat the gradient over and over again so that it looks sort of like a cylinder type of shape. And in that situation, you would put repeating linear like this instead of regular linear like that. Again, I'm going to define, I start in the left top, and then here I'm dividing up all the space between the different color stops. And if we reload that, you're going to see that it has sort of like that cylinder type of look as well. And then the final gradient we'll look at are actually radial gradients. And you define those by typing in radial gradient instead of linear gradient. And again, I'm dividing those colors up based off of just arbitrary numbers. Let's save that and reload it. And there you can see your radial gradient, which is a little bit scary looking. So there's different ways that we can play around with gradients and put them in backgrounds inside of divs, and you can use them for a whole bunch of other different things. And now I'm going to go in and actually show you how you can interact with your different elements to make them scale and skew and move and do things like that. So let's start off with a basic scale. And again, we're just going to type in our prefix right here with transform, and then follow that up with scale by 2. So we're going to say that we want our element to scale by 2, and specifically when we hover over it, so you can see there it went and it's scaled. I could probably move it and that would look a little bit nicer, but either way, that is how we can scale. We can also similarly come in here and rotate, and let's say I want to rotate this item 45 degrees whenever I hover over it. You can see that still scaling, and this is rotating 45 degrees, and of course you can rotate it any way that you would like. We can also come in and skew items, and here we'll have a skewing based off of the X direction, and here based off of the Y direction. Like I said, play around with these things. That would be the best way to learn how they work, and you can see exactly how we can skew our item. And then we could also come in and move the item. So here I'm going to translate or move it 20 pixels to the right and 20 pixels down. And you can see it's moving 20 pixels to the right and 20 pixels down. And next what we're going to do is sort of animate a cube. There you can see a rectangle or a square that we have over here, and we're going to make the edges round and at the same time change the color. And you can see I just have a basic div here with all this different things here. And you can define how you want to transition from one thing to the next. And what we're going to be transitioning to is a background of red from orange. And then the border radius is also going to change. And of course you can play around and change all these things, and please do that. It's a lot of fun actually. Then what we need to do is define exactly how we want to ease from the orange and regular old square to the rounded edge square and the color red. How we do that is with the prefix followed by transition, and then the period of time we're going to take to transition, and then how exactly we're going to transition. And you can see the different types of transitions you have right there. And you can see if I go and save that and reload this, we're going to change the red and also round the edges. That's kind of a simple animation, so now we'll look at a little bit more complicated. In this one, again, we're going to have a basic div right here, and then we'll be changing a whole bunch of different things here. We're going to be moving this guy around on the screen. And how you do that is, in this situation, we're going to use a WebKit way of creating keyframes, and then a standard old syntax for creating keyframes as well. And we're going to start this off with @ and then we're going to define all of the keyframes. So from the 0 point to 25 to 50 to 75 to 100. And from each transition, we're going to change the background color. So this is going to be the first transition, and we're going to start off with red. Then we're going to slowly transition to change the background color to yellow. We're going to move it to the right 200 pixels, and then we're going to move it to the right 200 pixels and down 200 pixels, changing the color and so forth and so on. We're doing exactly the same thing down here, and we're giving it the name example. And you can see example where that shows up right there. Then all we need to do is define the duration of the complete animation and the delay before the animation starts. And you're going to do that the same no matter what type of animation you are doing. So after we have that set up, we can save it and reload, and you're going to see that there it moves. Whoop, went off the screen, and then it came back down. So we could come in here if we wanted to make it go down instead of going up. We can change this to positive 200 and do the same exact thing right here. Positive 200 and reload it. And there's a 2-second delay, as you can see. Moves over, moves down, moves left, and moves back to its current position. So there's a look at a bunch of different ways we can animate and interact with different elements using cascading style sheets. And to clean up everything and finish up everything, I'd like to talk for a second about using alternative style sheets. We're also really a common thing to be used. We're going to here define our default style, and you can see basically what we're focusing in on are mobile or handheld, and then a printable version for your website, as well as a large text format for people that might have trouble seeing. And this is all we're going to do. We're going to define a different media type. We're going to give it a different title that the user will be able to switch between. And then, of course, point at a different style sheet for each of the different options. So now let's continue on here. And basically what I'm going to do is show you different ways to sort your content into different columns. This is pretty much the final thing we would want to look at here. So what we have here is lorem ipsum text over here. And we have a basic height, width, border, and overflow. In this situation is saying that if the text is bigger than the area that we are defining for the element that it's going to contain, we want the overflow to be hidden. And you can see right there that that indeed is happening. Now let's say that we wanted to create some column blocks that are going to take all this information and sort it inside of those columns. Again, we're going to be using the different prefixes for the different browsers. And let's say we want to take all of the content that is in the ID of lorem and sort it between 4 different columns. This is how we would do that. And we could bounce over here and reload it. And you're going to see indeed that it went and sorted all that information. If we stretch this out, there you can see 4 columns. And anything that goes beyond that point, of course, is going to be hidden because overflow is marked as hidden. We could also come in here and define, let's say we wanted to have lines between all of this different content. Well, we could go lorem again and define that we want little rules that are going to be dashed in black and 2 pixels wide with column rule, right like this. And reload it, and you can see that those little lines go in there. Another thing we can do, we have these guys down here, so let's bounce over for a second just to look at what we got. Here we have a bunch of divs. We have a big div called container, and then we have 3 different divs inside of there. We're going to be able to define the amount of space taken up by the elements in the containing element that we have here. And we're going to be able to do that by bouncing over here and defining our containers, height and width and border. And then we're going to define the container as a WebKit box. And this is going to create what are called flexible boxes for our content. Then what we just need to do is focus in on the divs that are inside of this main container div and define exactly, I'm just going to use WebKit here just to keep this simple because I'm using Chrome, but you could of course use the other ones. And we'll define this div right here specifically is going to take up 2 of whatever the total space is, and then we're going to do that for the other divs as well. So let's bounce in there, change this to 2 and change this to 3. And then let's say we want this to be 2 and this to be 3. This is going to take up the larger part of it, and file and save it and reload. And there you can see exactly how all of that space is divvied up between all of the different divs. So there's a run through of pretty much everything you could ever want to know about cascading style sheets, part 3. Hope you guys enjoyed this. This is a really crazy tutorial that I didn't even know if it would ever work out. But either way, please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.